Welcome into SEC Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller and Jackson Johnson here on a Wednesday evening. Back on the show. I know we didn't have a late week show last week, but back ready to go once again. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you could leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and have the notifications turned on so you do know when we do go live, because you're going to want to keep up with when we're going live, because we've got fantastic guests coming on the show, just like tonight. Ian Cummings from the Pro Football and Sports Network covers the NFL draft over there. Took the time to come and join us and break down the SEC at the NFL Combine. We got the Combine starting, I guess, workouts start tomorrow as we're recording. I know they had interviews going on today. So SEC, as always, well represented there. Wanted to get somebody in to take a look at the top prospects there. Ian, thank you so much for taking the time to join.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for allowing me another opportunity to talk about this class in particular for the SEC. A lot of talent, a lot of volume, a lot of questions, but also a lot of opportunity for guys who can show up and show out.
Absolutely. And we have to start at the position that's always going to be the center of attention, and that is the quarterback position. SEC with 4 representatives in Indianapolis: Ty Simpson from Alabama, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, Diego Pavia from Vanderbilt, and Taylon Green from Arkansas. We'll start with Simpson, who you have, I believe, number 41 on your big board right now as the number 2 quarterback in the class. Seems to be the consensus number 2 guy amongst most rankings, behind Fernando Mendoza, who's going to go number 1 overall to the Raiders. Do you see Simpson at this point? We'll get into like how he performs in Indy or what you're expecting, but do you feel confident in him being a first-round pick at this point? And how much does he have to show in Indianapolis to kind of solidify that spot as the number 2 after kind of fading down the stretch last season?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, right? Because I feel like there were a lot of factors at play, scarcity being one of the main ones in this QB class, right? We saw last year Tyler Shuck going at the top end of round 2. Right now, that's kind of where I would imagine Ty Simpson goes without any additional momentum. Now, you mentioned it, there's Fernando Mendoza ahead of him and no one else, right? And QB is a position where you can pay a QB tax, and you'll see teams try and take a guy late in round 1 if they want to get that 5th-year option, if they want to make sure that no one else gets him. So I think Ty Simpson, of all the QBs in the class, is the best position to take that second spot, but by no means is he a lock to go round 1, in my opinion. I think it's a very polarizing evaluation, right? Because like that mid-season stretch where he was playing his best ball, a lot of analysts were confident that, yeah, he could go in round 1. And then obviously you said he faded down the stretch. There were reports that maybe he was dealing with an injury, right? And now that he's fully healthy, we'll see. And I'm not up to date on whether he's going to test or throw at the Combine. Sometimes we don't always know until the day of what they're going to do. I think throwing at the Combine could be a good thing for him, right? Because here's the thing with Ty Simpson. We know operationally he was not very consistent down the stretch, right? And a lot of times when he was playing his best ball, that was one of his calling cards, is that he was a good processor. He could be accurate, mechanically sound. I love in particular, his rotational mechanics. He's very good at getting rotational torque and maximizing his, level of velocity. That said, he's not the biggest guy. I don't think he's an elite athlete for his size. I don't think he has elite arm talent. So when you don't have elite physical talent, the margin for error is a lot slimmer on the operational side. And that's where we saw the bouts of inaccuracy, right? Sometimes being a little bit late with reads down the stretch, sometimes being very frenetic under pressure. So you're not going to get that pressure environment at the NFL Combine, but what you can see is the mechanical congruence, is the accuracy working against air, right? And, if he can generate some good velocity, some RPMs, I think that could be a good thing for him, right? But the Combine is always a cross-checking evaluation the most, right? So you got to go back to the tape for the under pressure stuff. I think the more important thing for Ty Simpson at the Combine will, one, the medical checks too, to make sure he's fully healthy, but also the whiteboard and interview work, right? I think with Ty Simpson in particular, if he's not an elite physical talent, you as an NFL team, if you're interested in investing in him, you want to know if he has the mental acuity and the developmental potential right up here. And I think we saw flashes of that in his best film, but he's got to prove it to NFL teams this week. So I think it's going to be a lot more about winning over coaches and GMs just as much as it will be throwing against air and doing those testing and those drills. But a lot for him to prove. I think, again, this won't be the end-all be-all. He's got the pro day as well. And we know pro days can generate momentum too. But with the questions that are on the film, I think the biggest thing will be interviews and off-field and familiarizing himself with the front offices and coaching staffs. I think he has a chance to go round 1. But again, the film, there are pressing questions there that he really can't answer until he hits the field again in the NFL.
Well, that's true. And like the Rams and Steelers are definitely keeping an eye on their QB
Yeah.
situations at the moment, because it's like we know that Matthew Stafford's going to be playing in 2026, and it's trending, upwards on 2026 being the return of Aaron Rodgers. But it's always a good idea to not sit and wait for whether Rodgers is going to be retiring or returning. So, like 2027, Will the Rams and could the Rams and Steelers be satisfied with some of the, quarterback options from the SEC, or would they prefer to look elsewhere
In 2027 or this year?
for the 2026 draft?
For the 2026 draft, it's tricky, right? Because I think you don't want to force the issue. You never want to force the issue, right?
No.
And I think for the Rams in particular, right, Ty Simpson, does he have the skill set that they would want, right? I don't know if he has the requisite arm talent, the anticipation right now, right? There were flashes, absolutely, but did he have the consistency down the stretch where I would be comfortable? Matthew Stafford, the thing about him, he is poised. I mean, he gets hit a lot, and he's going back there every single snap. He's anticipating. He never loses any pace or any, intentionality with his game. And, I think Ty Simpson, that was one of the questions down the stretch is, again, the word that always comes back to mind for me is freneticism, right? So with Ty Simpson for the Rams, who have 2 first-round picks, the obvious question is, would you spend that second first-rounder on him? And I right now, I think the answer is no. He can win him over in the pre-draft process, but I think if you're the Rams, you're probably looking at one of those mid-round options. And if we're limiting ourselves to the SEC for this call, Taylor Green would probably be the biggest name on my mind if I'm Los Angeles, right? I think Taylor Green has the physical talent that you want. I think he has the arm. I think he has the athleticism, the size, obviously, but he's, a little, still he's experienced. That's the tricky part, right? He had a lot of experience playing wise at Boise State and then Arkansas, but never quite developed on the operational side, the consistency down to down with processing and anticipation and accuracy and decision-making that you would want. Sitting behind Matthew Stafford for a year or two could be the best thing for him. And I think in the middle rounds, it's a good opportunity cost gamble, but also for the Rams, you got to think, would we be better off waiting until the 2027 class, which obviously we can always say the grass is going to be greener, but Dante Moore going back, Arch Manning coming up, a few other names, Drew Mestemaker going to Oklahoma State, that class could have a lot more volume than this one. So you at least have to have that in the back of your mind.
You already brought up Green, so let's go ahead and talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
This does feel like an event, though, where he could shine a little bit. When we talk about the combine as being an opportunity to show off athleticism, and as you mentioned with Simpson, it's not just that. You have to go get on the whiteboard in front of the coaches and show that you can handle the processing side of it so much, which I think one of the biggest knocks in college football right now is a lot of the guys coming out do not have that as much as maybe they did in the back in previous eras. But for Green, I mean, a guy with his size and his athleticism, I mean, could he shoot up draft boards with a big showing in Indy?
Shoot up draft boards is an interesting, I don't know if that's how I would word it, just because we saw at the Senior Bowl, right? He had the flashy plays. He had the deep pass to Malachi Fields on day 2. The upside plays were there. There were also the plays where he didn't see the linebacker in the intermediate zone window rolling out, outside the pocket and threw a pick. There was the inconsistent moments with accuracy. So for me personally, right, here's the thing with the NFL Combine. You never want to double count something, right? Like the athleticism, we can see that on the film. The arm talent, we can see that on the film. We're going to get to quantify it here at the NFL Combine, and I have no doubt that Taylor Green is going to, if he does test, he's going to put up some really good numbers. And I think that incentivizes him to test, because having that validation, I think that'll boost him for sure in the eyes of some teams looking for a developmental QB. 6'6", 230, he could probably run a 4.5 at least. Like if it just off the eye test on the tape. He has wheels when he gets out in space, but he's agile too. He's got the ability to make guys miss. He's pretty tough as a runner too. And then the arm talent pops as well. Really easy velocity, easy layering ability. And I think working in a non-pressure, situation in throwing drills, I could see that layering ability, that ability to put pace and touch on those deep throws. I could see NFL evaluators kind of being won over by that. That said, you can't double count it. All of that talent is there on the film. We can quantify it at the NFL Combine. But again, I think whiteboard, interview, all of that work will be big for him too. So, but here's the thing too. scarcity is a factor that is it's constantly hanging over the head of this QB class in particular, right? The whole league will be just begging for someone to validate investment late day 2, mid to late day 2. Right now, Taylor Green has a day 3 grade for me, but I could, to your question, I could absolutely see him making a case for being a day 2 pick with his raw talent. Like, hey, we can invest in this guy. He can be something. I don't think that would be a slight reach on my board with my grade, and the evaluation. But again, if there's scarcity involved and that's going to drive the price of these QBs up, I think he's a prime candidate to capitalize for sure.
A guy who I think there's an expectation to perform well on the whiteboard, and someone who's probably in the best position to maybe challenge for that number 2 spot. It may still be a bit of a reach for him, but Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU, obviously had a ton of hype coming into this past season. As I think before the year, there was some talk like, could he be the number 1 quarterback in the draft? Obviously, measurables wise, it's never going to stand out with him, but the son of an NFL coach and Doug Nussmeier, a guy who had shown some good stuff on film at LSU the previous season, obviously battled injuries this past year, was also put in a pretty crappy situation offensively with the line in front of him and the schematics of it all, but didn't have the season he wanted. Seemed like he sort of started to wow some people back over in the Senior Bowl a little bit. What are your thoughts on Nussmeier in terms of, could he make that run as the number 2 quarterback in this draft?
Yeah, he's a very interesting QB, and I think there's some similar elements of his evaluation to Ty Simpson, right? I think Garrett Nussmeier was always a little overinflated, again, because of the scarcity. We didn't know who the QB1 was going to be in this class in the summer, right? Fernando Mendoza was a really compelling sleeper candidate transferring from California to Indiana, but even he still had to make that leap. You didn't have anyone. Cade Klubnik was a favorite for some. I liked him as well heading into the year, but obviously he regressed at Clemson, and it turns out that value may have been overinflated too, right? So we didn't know who the QB1 was going to be, and at that point, you kind of entertain all potential outcomes, and Garrett Nussmeier was one of those potential outcomes. Some compelling elements for sure. The son of Doug Nussmeier, Saints offensive coordinator, having that pedigree and that coaching, that NFL coaching background and the familiarity, and then you watch the film at LSU. I think he's one of the most cerebral signal callers and field generals in this class. I think pre-snap, he has a ton of autonomy, which as an NFL offensive coordinator, that's going to be a big green flag, is if you can operate pre-snap and get guys in position and, call audibles and undress defensive looks and get the looks that you want. I think Garrett Nussmeier has shown that he can do all of those things. And then post-snap, he's a good processor. I think he has shown that he can anticipate and, isolate one-on-one opportunities and layer the ball. But here's the thing with Garrett Nussmeier, right? All of those things, those high highs as a processor and operator, the lows are just as devastating, where he makes a head-scratching decision, forcing the ball or not seeing a linebacker. He has the processing ability, but I think the volatility as an operator was there for him the same way it was for Simpson down the stretch. And again, it goes back to when you don't have that elite physical foundation to go off of. Garrett Nussmeier, middling athlete, middling arm talent. I think he's not a liability in terms of his arm, but it's not going to be something that elevates him alone. Your margin for error has to be a lot slimmer on the operational side. The Senior Bowl was a good week for him, though. I think he built himself up over the course of the week. And on that final day, you saw the offense doing the 2-minute drill, right? And Nussmeier he was in command. He was driving them down the field. He was spiking the ball really quickly. He was getting guys in position, and he was making decisive, accurate throws to get his team in position to get the game-winning field goal, right? So all of those moments are there with Nussmeier. But the trouble is you got to cut out the bad decisions. You got to cut out the bouts of inaccuracy. And I don't know if we're there yet off of the film right now. At the NFL Combine, it's going to be a similar conversation for him as well. He's not going to wow in testing. If he tests in the throwing drills, he can fare well. But again, I don't think you're going to see elite velocity, right? And the accuracy has to be on point. I think for him, especially, winning over coaches on the whiteboard is going to be the key, because he is a cerebral player. He is a really good pre-snap processor, and I think he'll be able to break down a lot of the schematics at a high level pace. So I think that will be something that'll be the biggest check mark on his checklist, right? To try and win guys over and earn that late day 2 capital. I think he can do it for sure, but I don't know if at this point he can do enough to bridge the gulf between him and Ty Simpson, because as much as the reservations I have with both of them, I do think Ty Simpson is a rung higher on the talent spectrum. My comp for Ty Simpson has always been Mark Bulger from the start. I think, he's kind of that guy who can be a quality starter for you at the NFL level if he's properly incubated with the supporting cast. I don't know if he's going to be a guy that elevates you to Super Bowl contention, right? I think Garrett Nussmeier in his best outcome can be maybe an Andy Dalton type, right? Who can be a spot starter, can be a low-level starter for a while and at least keep you competitive in the playoff race. But again, you're not looking at, I don't know if you're looking at guys who can elevate, and the avenue for them to elevate is going to be on the mental side, right? So that's where they need to win teams over.
Last quarterback, because we have to talk about Diego Pavia a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there any world where he does something in Indy to wow a team over, or is this just kind of all for fun?
I think it is fun no matter what with Diego Pavia.
Right.
I think, and hey, credit to him. I think at the Senior Bowl he came out and was galvanizing the guys, and it was clear that they were having fun being around him at the practices. So I think that's one thing. But with him, testing will be key, right? Because I think you look at the film. I don't know if he's very translatable as a quarterback, right? I think the numbers were good, the efficiency was good, but you turn on the film and a lot of it is manufactured either late in reps after creating with his athleticism, right? Or just kind of, quick game things that don't stress him a lot as a processor. And especially at the Senior Bowl, you could really see it when they had to get into multi-read plays where he had to read coverages. There were frequent delays and frequent plays where he had to create for himself and get off script. And that was when things opened up. And you wonder if the height factors in. I know there's been a conversation with Bryce Young and Kyler Murray in the NFL, being able to see over those offensive linemen. And then the arm is pretty limited too. So even at the Senior Bowl, that was pretty apparent that he just can't put the RPMs on that other guys can. So I think for Diego Pavia, just familiarizing yourself with teams in the interview room and proving that you're a guy that they want in the locker room, right? I think that's a big part of it. And then testing will be key because ultimately down the stretch, he does have one. I try to be constructive with my evaluations. Like he's got the athleticism, he's got the toughness, but as a quarterback, I don't think there's a ton translatable there. So I think ultimately down the line, he may be a guy that teams will look at as a position flex convert, maybe to wide receiver, right? So I think testing will be big for him.
Looking at some of the other positions, if we go down your big board, you don't have any SEC players in the top 12. You have a few guys sort of in that top 15 type range. Who are some of the top guys that you're looking at in the combine that you're looking to see have a standout performance or just really the most interested to watch?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few. I think Caleb Banks is definitely one from Florida. He showed out at the Senior Bowl, and he's my current DT1 by a slight margin over Peter Woods. And obviously the sample size, right? The availability over the course of his career. There are a lot of questions with Caleb Banks, but the talent is not one of them. And I'm really excited to see if we get true valuations and quantifications for his athleticism, because at 6'6", over 330 with 35-inch arms, the guy should not be able to move the way that he does. It's certifiably insane, right? And you go back to his game against LSU in 2024. That was a game where he was taking reps outside at 5 tech, right, 4 and still disrupting one-on-one. So if you can if you're an NFL team, like within that lens, getting this moldable ball of clay into your defensive line room and just molding him into this alignment versatile disruptor, I feel like there's a lot of potential there, and he's just going to continue to win guys over at the NFL Combine. Mansour Delane is another really fun player, and I'm intrigued to get a quantification for his athleticism because I think he's a very, very good athlete. But in particular, you have him and Jermod McCoy medical checks will be key in particular for him at the NFL Combine. Obviously ended up sitting out the year recovering from that torn ACL. So teams will want to know if he's on track to a full recovery, because when he's at 100%, I feel like he's one of the most talented corners in this class. You can make an argument that Brandon Cisse from South Carolina is another guy right there with him in terms of raw talent. But Mansour Delane was the best corner in college football this past year. He was absolutely locked down. I think per True Media, he only fielded a target every 26 coverage snaps or something crazy like that. That's about as clamps as you can be. So I'm really excited to see if we get athletic valuations for him. And then a few other guys that I'll bring up, 2 trench players from Texas A&M. I think Demetrius Crownover on the offensive line. He has a really, really big opportunity here because he had a good Senior Bowl showing. I think he was one of the more consistent offensive linemen at the Senior Bowl. And you look at the physical framework, his tools are 99th percentile, being at 6'7", over 330 with close to 36-inch arms, I think 35 and a half, just insane reach. And then he's very nimble, explosive out of stance. So especially in this tackle class, right? You have guys like Lomu Fano, Caden Proctor, you got Francis Mauigoa, you've got Blake Miller, Monroe Freeling. But after those guys, I think there is a potential void for a crown over to fill in the early to mid day 2 range and be a potential starter for teams. So I think those players, Cassius Howell, I'll bring him up in one of our later questions. I think he applies better for one of those. But to summate it and put a bow on all of it, even though I don't have any SEC players in my top 12, I still think there's a lot of volume in this conference, in this class. And I think a lot of guys have the potential energy to rise after this week.
Well, and also just kind of like look at, the prospects, the rest of them from the SEC. Which of the SEC prospects would have the most to gain in your mind, Ian?
Yeah, the most to gain. I think crown over applies here as well. I look at the athleticism and just, right now you'll see him in a lot of like fringe day 2, day 3 projections, right? But I really think he can be a top 50 pick if he tests well, which probably expected to test well. But again, coaches will salivate at the physical potential, and the NFL Combine is a really important checkpoint because not only because of the testing and the interview, but this is where coaches and GMs and front office officials start to get together and really come to they don't come to a consensus here, but they start to find common ground on prospects. And I think Demetrius Crownover in particular is going to be one that really wins over coaches with his potential as a pass protector. And then already in the run game, he can displace guys very easily, with his power profile, with his size. So I'd put him in that category. I would put Kendrick Law from Kentucky in that category. He was a player who transferred from Alabama to Kentucky. And I think his production, that'll be a hang up for a lot of people, but quietly there are some pretty good signs. He had a team leading 22% yardage share. I think his drop percentage was close to 3%, so really small. And then he averaged over 4 yards over expectation per reception in the rack face, run after catch, just an incredibly dynamic rack threat. And then he ran, I think, a 10:48 100-meter dash in high school. So he's got the vertical speed. He's got the explosion at 6 foot 205. And I think even on that Kentucky film, obviously the volume production wasn't there against SEC competition, but I think he was hamstrung by inconsistent QB play and scheming. I really think you're looking at a guy who has the route running building blocks, the flexibility, the lower body flexion, the hip fluidity in the sink to really be a quality NFL player. So I'm a big fan of the upside there. I expect him to turn some heads in Indianapolis, and there's plenty of athletic SEC receivers. I think Chris Brazell, the second from Tennessee, obviously the vertical speed, right? I think at his size, he could test extremely well. Zachariah Branch is going to have a lot of eyes on him, right? He's often billed as a gadget guy sometimes, but again, I think the building blocks as a route runner are there for him too. And if he tests well, especially with his returning background, he could rise as well. You see a lot of those guys having that kick returner, punt returner background to fall back on. With the new special teams rules, those skill sets take on even greater value in the NFL. So those are a few that I think could really stand to gain from quality NFL Combine showings. Obviously, there's many more. Kevin Coleman, the junior from Missouri, is another one. I've been a big fan of him for sure. I think he's another one where the analytics come in really strong. Obviously, a little smaller, but a really good route runner, really shifty player. And at the Senior Bowl, you could see too, like he can separate easily, but also when he's crowded at the catch point, he plays tough. He plays composed, and I love that about him. So a lot of guys in that receiver room in particular, I think could show out at the NFL Combine and gain a lot, if not rise up the board completely, earn more fans in that middle round range where they land with a good environment.
Any chance my guy Brendan Thompson makes a run at the 40 record?
Oh, he might, honestly, man. I mean, I was so excited to see him at the Senior Bowl, and they ended up not going to the Senior Bowl, which I get, but he's another one too. I'm glad you mentioned him because I have so many names going through my brain at every given second. Like sometimes it's like the lotto ball machine. Sometimes one slips out. So
there's a ton of receiver talent, which
there's so much.
That's becoming the case every single year.
Oh yeah, it's been a golden age of receiver for a few years now, and that volume just has not trickled off. And I think next year we're going to see a lot too. But yeah, Brendan Thompson, man, he's a burner. I could see him running low 4.2s. I think what was his personal best? Was it 10:18? Something
I believe
fast?
So.
That's insane, man. I mean, you could see a little bit of translation there, for guys. So he's he's got the vertical speed. And the fun part with his film too is he's a pretty good stem artist on the vertical plane too. Like he's not just a linear mover. He knows how to get guys off balance and capitalize with that burst and that fluidity. So I could definitely see him. He's another one who's probably going to gain a lot. Every year you see someone run a blazing 40 and then they end up shooting up boards. That's one of the rare exceptions. Like in general, and for me personally, it's like I don't like to double count it, but you also acknowledge we have seen guys time and time again if they can ride a 4.2 to top 50 capital after being pretty overlooked through the process. I think he's definitely one. So good shout there.
And just kind of like also, looking at the rest of the prospects as well for the SEC, which one of them need to really have a good showing to solidify position for the 2026 draft exactly?
Yeah, I think there's a few for sure. I think it depends on, I'm looking at guys who are valued maybe higher than they would be with potential red flags in the profile. I think two guys that stand out, Cassius Howell, I mentioned him earlier, and R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. I think those two guys are undersized edge rushers, right? In particular with Cassius Howell, you have a potentially outlier arm length. You don't have a ton of power capacity on film, but again, the guy just makes plays and just disrupts and creates pressure and havoc as a pass rusher, right? So I think the film does a lot of the talking for him, but still being a guy who might measure in as small as 6'2", under 250, maybe in the 240s with 31-inch arms, like that's a size outlier at edge. So you really need to compensate with at least good functional athletic testing, right? If he measures that in that range and runs a 4.7 or 4.65, like that might cause some pause for teams. I'm not saying it should, because I think in the right scheme, in odd front schemes where he can rush from wider alignments, 9-tech, I do think he has the requisite functional athleticism and bend and veracity as a rusher to compensate. But that's going to be a box that teams will be looking for him to check. And same thing with R. Mason Thomas. I think with R. Mason Thomas, the first step is it's easier to see on film. I think Howell has that first step explosion too, but R. Mason Thomas's first step is volcanic. I mean, he covers so much ground reaching the apex, and then he's shown that he can channel a little bit more speed to power. So I think Cassius Howell is another one who's going to need that. I think that'll be a good stepping stone for him. I think Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt is another one too. You look at the tight end class. He's one of the most efficient receiving threats. He has an insane yards per route run figure, probably the best in the class. I don't remember it off the top of my head. I feel bad. I should, but he's one of those guys who he specializes as a receiving threat at the cost of blocking. He's definitely smaller. He's definitely leaner, and he is very scarcely used in blocking situations just in general, especially, pass blocking in particular, but then also I think his volume, his route run percentage was over 70% on his plays, which, usually with tight ends, you see it a lot closer to 50% if they're getting more involved in the running game. Eli Stowers was, I feel like, not utilized as a blocker, especially in line. You rarely ever see him in line. So when you're a receiving specialist like that, you need to test well to compensate. You need to have that athleticism to underpin your game if you want to be an Oronde Gadsden type early contributor like the Chargers had. So I think Eli Stowers really needs to test well to solidify his positioning. Right now, he's an early day 3 for me, just because for me personally, I feel like tight ends, if you want to be insulated schematically and have that flexibility, you've got to be able to play in line and provide blocking value to play on those heavy personnel sets. But if he's going to distinguish himself, it's got to be as that elite athlete, elite receiving threat. This is where he does it. So there's a few other guys too. I think CJ Allen from Georgia is another one, being kind of close to average size. He's the favorite, I think, to be LB3 behind Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles. But being a guy who's listed at 6'1", 230, we don't know what he's going to measure in at. If it's a little smaller, I think the onus is on him to test well and make sure. And I think he does show off good explosion on tape. I think closing speed is good, especially in the half field range. But he's another one who I think teams will want to see that verification, especially if they're taking, because a guy like Anthony Hill Jr., it's different. Like, he's bigger. He has the verifiable pedigree, and it shows up on film. Again, it shows up on film for CJ Allen. I think he's athletic enough. But when you don't have that size to fall back on, teams will want to see that. So I think those are a few that fit that mold.
You bring up Stowers, and I don't know if you've seen the meme from Max Toscano Do you like this tight end for tight end reasons or wide receiver
Yep,
reasons?
I have seen that. Yeah,
That's what goes through my head every single time, because I guess Max has kind of red pilled me on the tight end position.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. He's one of the ones who contributed to that for me too. You know, he helped me kind of rethink it this cycle. Like I in the past, I was always gravitating to more of the receiving ones, but this cycle I've really upped the grading, the weight that I put on blocking, because it's not only important for plays where you're actually blocking, but also schematically. I think if you can't block, it really hamstrings the types of sets that you can be put out on the field in, right? So I think schematically and just for the usage profile, it's very important. So shout out to Max. He knows more about tight ends than anyone, and he's really helped me kind of change my frame of reference for it too. But that's with the lens through which I'm looking at Eli Stowers too. Like if you're gonna be this player who's really only I won't say he's only usable on passing downs, but right now he is basically he is probably close to a liability on running down. So you've got to show me that you have that athleticism to fall back on if you're going to be a primary receiving threat.
I know we've run a little bit long here, but there is one other guy I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on Caden Proctor? Because I feel like that's kind of a polarizing player when you compare some of the on-field play versus the potential. So.
Yeah, no, he's one that I've gone back and forth on for the whole cycle. My gut feeling, it's tricky, right? Because I think his best film at tackle showed showed a realm where he can stick a tackle. My opinion is that he ultimately probably projects better at guard. That's just my opinion, right? Because I don't think he's the best against speed rushers and finesse rushers, right? I mean, obviously, being a guy who's 6'6", 6'7", the weight and mass that he carries, right? He's a little stiff in the hips sometimes, and I don't think he has great range getting out on his kick. And sometimes he can't always sink down to meet guys and anchor when they have that angle advantage as speed rushers. That said, I do think at his best this year, he improved his pass set. His balance, I think his upper-lower synergy was solid. And then again, when he gets hands on you, he can finish you and bury you in the dirt. I mean, he's so physical in the run game. He can displace guys off the line. And then in pass protection, too, his anchor strength is very, very good. So I like him. I don't love him as a prospect. He's probably close to the round 1, round 2 fringe for me right now. And my NFL comp for him is Leonard Davis, who was drafted as a tackle by, I believe, the Cardinals back in the early 2000s. And he was drafted as a tackle. He was drafted early, but ended up making a mid-career transition to guard with the Cowboys and was a multi-year Pro Bowler at guard. So I think Proctor, you can let him win or lose at tackle early on in his career, but he ultimately might have a better long-term projection at guard, where the stiffness and the lack of elite athletic range will be mitigated, and then you can start to play into more of his strengths in a phone booth, the driving power, the physicality, the anchor strength. And I think for his height, I think he has pretty good leverage acquisition and knee bend, which can help with that too. So my gut feeling, I think he can be a quality tackle at the NFL level, but I think his higher ceiling rests at guard.
Ian, we really appreciate your time. I know we've got a couple links here for over on Twitter, but where else can people check out your work, or where would you want to direct them to?
Yeah, so the Twitter real quick at IC_draft. Any draft questions you have for me, always feel free to hit me up. But also the mock draft simulator is a tool that we are consistently updating. We are going on the next update. We're going to have write-ups and reports for all of our top 150 players, and we're adding more and more every single day. So the goal is that well before the draft, you'll have a report for all of the draftable players and even beyond, and you can use that to guide your process and explore different outcomes and lead up to the big event. And then we also have the NFL Draft Hub that we're working on this cycle. You have my player rankings complete with composite grades and subtrait grades. And then also consensus rankings, combine info, measurements, testing data, all of those things readily available for you to, again, inform your process. That's what we're trying to do at PFSN. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of upkeep, but it's a lot of fun too. So it's been fun to get to this point, and another checkpoint with NFL Combine. Still a lot of work to do, but we're taking it step by step, and it's been a lot of fun.
There you go. Tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at Publix about the magic that Ian Cummings brings on PFSN 365 Network. All right there. And give him a follow on IC_draft. Let's get our guy over to 10,000 followers on X. Let's get him there.
We've got the mock draft simulator linked in the description of the video. That's definitely a really cool tool for people to go to. So yeah, everyone listening, go check out that stuff leading up to the draft. Ian, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, Jackson. So I'm pretty sure you want to direct us to a wonderful shop where people can get some fantastic gifts.
Certainly. Because the Easter Bunny and the Easter Beagle are teaming up to get some top-notch stuff all right here, especially from the Voice College Football merch store, where we've got it all right here. We've got the trucker hat, we've got the dad hat, we've got the t-shirt, the polo shirt. We've got it all right here. And also, we've got the other teams. We've got Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, LSU. Well, we don't have Mississippi State yet, but we'll get there. But we've got South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Oklahoma. We've got it all right here on the VOCFB website. And Andrew, I got to ask, what is on your Easter list from the merch store? Like, what are you hoping the Easter Beagle and the Easter Bunny are going to team up to get you?
I think one of those beautiful hats. Like, you really cannot beat that. I'm a hat guy a lot of the time. So a Voice of College Football hat. Those things are beautiful right there. The trucker hats, especially, that great material stands out. Look, somebody sees that, they're gonna want to know what VOCFB means. So got to get one of those.
Oh, great. It's a must get. It's a must get for sure. So we got to get them all. We got to catch them all right here on vocfb.com/shop.
So, again, thanks to Ian for taking his time to preview the Combine. Really cool and fun conversation that's going to be taking place. As some of you are going back listening to this, testing begins on Thursday. I cannot wait till Saturday when the receivers are running.
Oh, man. Yeah, tomorrow is only going to be at 56 more days until the 2026 draft.
Yeah, the draft is getting here closer and closer, and we're definitely going to have content here on the channel previewing the draft as we lead into that, where some of the top guys in the SEC are going to land, and obviously this event with the Combine will play quite a big role in that. I cannot wait to see the receivers run because I want to see Brendan Thompson go for that record. I don't know if he's going to break it, but that'd be really cool to see him lead the Combine, a Mississippi State guy do that. So I'm looking forward to that. Going to be a little bit more tuned into the Combine than I normally would. We're going to kind of take a little bit of a different direction here to close out the show. And we're not going to go – I say we won't go long. We always end up arguing over stuff much longer, so we'll see how this goes. I don't need to go long because my throat is – I'm sick again. My throat's killing me right now. So we'll try to keep this short. But we thought we would touch on a little college basketball. I know this is a football channel, but it is like the peak of college basketball season as we're rounding into March. The NCAA tournament is just a few weeks away. The SEC tournament's just – like a week and a half away, I think, at this point. Just a few more games, or 2 weeks maybe, but just a few more games left in the SEC. There's obviously some SEC games in action right now as we're recording. Wanted to take a look at some bracketology. We're not going to go down the whole board, right? We know the likes of Tennessee, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Kentucky. I'm missing somebody. Those teams are all Arkansas. Those teams are all very, very likely.
Arkansas is good.
Yeah, Arkansas is very, very good.
Florida is running the show.
Florida, I forgot to say. Yeah, Florida's got a chance to get a shot into one seed.
Oh, they're getting out the belt and giving everybody a spanking.
I will say Florida's in a battle with Texas right now.
Oh, yeah.
Close game in the second half. So that's just life in the SEC. Those teams we feel pretty good about being NCAA tournament teams. I think my guy T3 Bracketology has not quite locked in the Wildcats just yet, but those are all teams that we expect to see in the tournament when it's all said and done. We have 5 SEC teams that are still on the bubble at this point, between Georgia, who most still have comfortably in the field, but still a bubble team, Texas A&M, Auburn, Texas, and then Missouri. We wanted to take a look at those teams, mostly Auburn. We'll take a glance at some of the others, but Auburn's the one. Jackson, I know I'll let you as the real rival get whatever thoughts you have about Auburn first. So the Auburn Tigers, for those unfamiliar, still consensus projected to make the tournament. But this is a team that after last night losing to Oklahoma, not a good Oklahoma team, 2 games below, they lost to my Mississippi State Bulldogs, not a good Mississippi State team. They're 15-13 overall. And they are the team that's probably the most controversial when it comes to tournament selection. They're the
They're
team that has people
terrible.
the most PO'd right now at Joe Lenardi and all the bracketologists out there. Like, how on earth do we still have this team in the field? What are your thoughts on the Tigers?
I mean, that win over St. John's isn't going to protect them forever. I mean, I know that St. John's is a tough out in the Big East, no doubt, especially
St. John's getting worked by UConn right now, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, they can always celebrate with hookers like Rick Pitino did with Louisville, but nah. But in all seriousness, though, yeah, like Auburn has lost 6 of the last 7 games. They lost to Alabama. They lost to Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Arkansas. I mean, no shame in that, but okay. But you didn't lose. I mean, you're not exactly losing to Dak Prescott at Mississippi State. You're not exactly losing to a good Mississippi State team. Sorry, Andrew.
They lost to Josh Hubbard. That's what happened in that game. They lost to Josh Hubbard and no one else because no one else in the Bulldogs did anything in that game.
Oh, yeah. And they lost to a terrible Oklahoma team last night, which, I mean, it was just like, good grief. Like 6 of 7 losses. I mean, you bet if you're Auburn, you better do everything in your power to win out. And while you're at it, make sure you make a Cinderella run in the SEC tournament and make sure you're playing on hours before Selection Sunday in the title game. That's pretty much your good chance of getting in at this point. Because, like, honestly, it's not good. You can't get bailed out by that win over St. John's forever. Like, good God. I mean, beating Kentucky, I mean, it's not like you're beating a really good Kentucky team. You're beating a mid-Kentucky team.
So, I hear everything you're saying, and I don't think Auburn's a very good team. However, the reason Auburn is still projected as in the field, not safely, but projected in the field, it is, I mean, you kind of mentioned the win over St. John's, but they have a win over NC State, who's been a pretty good team. They've got a win against Arkansas. They've got a win. What is that? I had an ad playing on my channel. Breakthrough. They have a win at Florida, which is really remarkable. And like the Kentucky win you mentioned, your thoughts on that, but 5-11 against quad 1, 2-2 quad 2. They do not have a quad 3 or 4 loss and are not going to have one when it's all said and done. The big thing is the strength of schedule. They are number 1 in the net strength of schedule, number 16 in the out-of-conference strength of schedule.
Yeah.
They played an incredibly difficult slate, and that's going to boost them up. Now, look, the metrics don't love them at this point. Their average resume metric, they're 41st, which is firmly on the bubble, which those would be like your wins above bubble, your strength of record. Even with the strength of schedule, the record that they have, having 13 losses, like that's tough. Yeah. And then even the quality metrics only have them as like a top 35 team, which is still, that's a team that you would expect to be in the field.
True.
But that's, that can't save you. Look, Auburn's a team people are going to be very frustrated about. At the end of the day, if Auburn hits 18 wins, they're in the tournament.
Yeah.
Because we've seen teams with similar resumes. 18 wins is kind of the benchmark. A few years back, Michigan got in at like 17 and 14. Like, Michigan got in the field with 17 wins, and it was kind of a similar profile to Auburn, although Auburn's might actually be a little bit stronger. But if the Tigers hit 18 wins, they're in the field. And look, Ole Miss, LSU, at Alabama to close. Ole Miss, LSU, they absolutely have to win those games. Like, you just can't take another loss like that. And Ole Miss would be a quad 3 loss if they lost it. But then at Alabama, I mean, if they get the win in Tuscaloosa, there's not a question. They're in the tournament. If they lose at Alabama, probably need to get one in the SEC tournament to feel good. But look, Auburn, I get it. And I also fully understand they're not a team that at this point, would anybody say Auburn is a good basketball team at this point? Probably not.
No, Auburn sucks.
They're a great case for why NCAA tournament expansion is stupid. That we're saying that's a team that's pretty safely in the field right now. For what it's worth, this morning's update from Joe Lenardi, and let me say, I follow bracketology closely enough to know that listening to Joe Lenardi is not the smartest thing to do. I keep up with bracketology quite a bit, or at least I have in the past when State's been in the mix. I do not take Lenardi's word as gospel by any means, but he had Auburn as the last of his last 4 buys this morning. So he still has them in the field above Dayton. meaning they would not be one of the last 4 teams in, which means kind of wiggle room to maybe lose one more game, although it hinges on what other teams do. Look, if Auburn finishes the year 500, they're not going to make the tournament. There's a certain bench line of games you have to win to get in the field. But if Auburn gets to 18 wins, they will be a tournament team. And it is what it is for people.
Well, I'll be pulling for Alabama and knock them out of that bubble when it gets to March. But in all seriousness, though, I can't help but wonder if Auburn can say that, well, Alabama had Bediako, on February 7th. I wonder if they could use that, be like, yeah, we lost Alabama, but they were playing Bediako when, they were still saying it was okay to be playing him or not. They kind of waited till the ruling. But it's like, I wonder if they're going to play that card, really.
An interesting team is Georgia, who most have projected as a 9 seed right now. The Bulldogs, 19-8 overall on the season. They are number 33 in the net. If you look at their resume metrics, the resume is kind of what's helping Georgia out right now, because they are 4-6 against quad 1, 6-1 against quad 2. So a 10-7 record against the top 2 quadrants. If you have a winning record against quads 1 and 2, you're generally in a pretty good spot. Do have a quad 3 loss on the resume, but they're top 35 in their resume average rank to this point, which is generally good enough to be in the field. The quality metrics don't love them as much. They're not seen as a surefire great team, and they don't really – the wins, they have a win over Arkansas. That's the best one they've got on the schedule. And I mean, maybe you would say Auburn, but it's Arkansas is the clear best win that they have. Also went on the road to Kentucky, though, as a win. They're in a battle right now with Vanderbilt, a chance at another quad 1 opportunity. I think Georgia probably has to get at least one more to feel good, but Georgia should be in the field, assuming they don't just collapse down the stretch. Do have a landmine. They cannot lose against South Carolina at home. They got to win that game. But if they get that win, I think they're in the field. And if they get 2 more, I think they're safely in. They're avoiding Dayton.
Well, and also just kind of looking at Missouri last night, they kind of helped their case in getting in last night by beating Tennessee. That was a good win right there. That was an excellent win.
Yeah, no, Missouri has done a really good job of playing their way to the field. And again, using the most recent update from Lenardi, which I'm referencing just because he's the only guy that put out anything this morning. He bumped Missouri up into his last 4 buys. So he has them in the field, has them avoiding Dayton. Missouri fans have been pretty frustrated as why they're getting talked about as one of the last teams in the field when you consider the wins. Because look, 5-5 against quad 1, 4-4 against quad 2, do not have a quad 3 or 4 loss. Strength of record, number 35. They're 36th in wins above bubble. 43rd strength of schedule, pretty solid. They, own a win. They went to beat Florida. Obviously got the win against Vanderbilt, the win against Tennessee. They've got really good wins on the schedule. At Texas A&M is a good win. The holdup in Missouri is the metrics hate them. Their average ranking from a metric standpoint from their team quality is 46.7, which is kind of outside of clear. That's firmly bubble territory. Essentially what that means is Missouri is a team that, even though they've got really good wins and a good record, they don't play a style that is conducive to being a great team, at least according to the metrics. That's purely off the metrics. Now, what you typically hear from bracketologists is that does not matter as much when it comes to getting in the field. What matters most for making the tournament is your resume, which, as I mentioned, Missouri's in a good place there. Missouri is 38th in their resume metric average. That's definitely good enough when you consider the wins that they have, don't have a bad loss. They absolutely project as a tournament team. Their ceiling is going to be limited, though, because of the quality metrics. That's one thing that kind of knocks you. Seeding tends to be dictated by how good the metrics say you are from a quality standpoint. That's where Mizzou could still end up. I don't think they would go to Dayton. I think if they handle business down the stretch, you look at their remaining schedule, it's quad 2, quad 1 opportunities. They have at Mississippi State this weekend. Don't want to lose that game because the Bulldogs, even though it's a quad 2 game, 94 in the net, Mississippi State's not a good team. But then a couple more quad 1 games at Oklahoma versus Arkansas. if Missouri goes 2-1, Missouri is a lock to make the tournament, and Missouri they'll be avoiding Dayton. They'll be safely in the field, but probably still somewhere around the 9 line, I would imagine.
Yeah. For sure, man.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's for sure, man. Like, there's no doubt about it.
Let's talk about the two teams in the state of Texas here to close this out, just kind of what has to happen for those teams to get in the field. Again, going off of what Lenardi most recently had, Texas A&M and Texas are both in his last 4 byes as it stands currently. Did the Aggies lose last night? No, they didn't.
No.
I don't. But, yeah, so looking at Texas, 16-10 overall, not great. Strength of record, 42nd, 43rd, went to bubble. They're 37 in the net. 5-7 quad 1, 2-2 quad 2. So a 7-9 record top 2 quadrants is fine. It's not great. Do have the quad 3 loss that they suffered to Mississippi State at home. That's going to kind of be a red flag over them. But what Texas has done, beat NC State in the non-con, which has been a good win. At Alabama, beat Vanderbilt. You know, they've got that head-to-head against Missouri. It's a team that they're sort of battling with for positioning. They've got a couple strong wins. I think they probably need to get a few more down the stretch to feel safe, but if they add a couple more quality wins, and they're what's the live score for them against Florida at this point?
Well, right now, it's 64.
If Texas beats Florida, I would think they would get a couple. Like, if you beat Florida, that would put them at 17 wins. Their strength of schedule is 21st. They might only need 18 wins. It might be Auburn-ish, where if they get to 18 wins, they'd be in the field, honestly. Which, I think Texas has kind of been an up-and-down team, but if we're just talking about what it takes, if they beat Florida, I think they get one more the rest of the way. They got a good chance of being in the field. For
sure, man. No doubt about it.
All right, we'll close with Texas A&M here. The Aggies, number 42 in the net, 19-8 overall, 36 strength of record, 40th wins above bubble, strength of schedule 66th. 4-5 against quad 1, 4-3 quad 2. Do not have a quad 3 or 4 loss. You know, the big knock for them is they do not have a significant win out of conference. Played a pretty light slate in the non-con, and just didn't get any of those wins to sort of stack up. And look, they have not beaten the best opponents they've played. That's kind of the other knock, is they don't really have a ton of great wins. Auburn, Texas, Georgia, those are sort of the games they have against tournament teams, but none of those are teams that are safely in the field. So if there's a knock on Texas A&M, it's the lack of truly big-time wins. They did get the win. They're playing Arkansas tonight. What time is that game going to be? They're going to be
Mississippi State will start in 5 minutes.
I'm talking about Arkansas in Texas
Arkansas.
A&M.
Oh, they'll start in a bit.
It's probably going to be another 8 o'clock game.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a big opportunity. I think going on the road against an Arkansas team that could be like a top 4 seed in the tournament, you need a win like that. I think they probably want to get 2-2 down the stretch, probably does it. No bad loss opportunities left. I mean, at LSU would not be great, but the Tigers are top 70 in the net. I don't think Texas A&M has the ability to rise up very high from a seed standpoint, just because the overall the metrics not great on them. What are their average metric? 32 from a team quality standpoint, so that helps them some, but around 43 from a resume standpoint. Again, 2-2 for the Aggies, I think does it, but really, I think if they want to feel great, they need to get a win at Arkansas tonight as we record.
Oh yeah,
that should do it for us. My voice is already about shot. Again, we thought it would be fun to hit some bracketology stuff. Again, I know it's a football channel, and football, we can talk about it year-round, but we had the great conversation looking at the draft with Ian. We thought it'd be fun to look at some teams and their chances to get into the NCAA tournament down the stretch. SEC should be well represented once again, but a few of these teams firmly on the bubble definitely have to close out the year strong. We may do a little bit more basketball content going forward. Not going to make any promises, but I thought around SEC tournament time, March Madness time, maybe we do some stuff on the channel. So we'll see on that. But definitely want to continue talking any news that happens with the SEC from a football standpoint, more NFL draft stuff, maybe some more news coming out of the combine with guys who perform well.
Spring practice and
spring practices are just around the corner. Look, it's about to be March. So once March hits, you're going to get spring practice. So we're definitely going to dive into that and start doing some spring previews. I know we've had a few of those on the channel already, but taking a little bit of a deeper look at some of these teams across the conference going into the spring. Jackson, what do you have that you would like to plug?
Well, tomorrow night I've got the Alabama College show with Jeffrey and myself, as Jeffrey and I take your calls on the Crimson Tide, 9 p.m. Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, where let's just say it's kind of like a Ren and the Alabama College show is kind of like a mixing of the OG Ren and Stimpy and bits and pieces of the Feinbaum show in a way, but it's always a fun ride. All right there on the Alabama Call-In show with Jeffrey and myself. But also, you can check me out on the Jacksonian, where I'm one episode away from episode 100 on Jackson Johnson 979, 270 subs away. And for more updates, what I've got going on right here on SEC at the Voice of College Football, Alabama at the Voice of College Football, or the Jacksonian, check me out on JatsVSippy on @/Twitter and on Instagram threads. JatsShots543908. Andrew, what magic have you got cooking on Mississippi State at the Voice of College Football and other adventures?
Yeah, call-in show tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central Time should be the plan. I've been moving those around a little bit here and there just for my own schedule, but we'll have a call-in show on the channel, so if you're a Bulldog fan, come be a part of the action. We can chat about whatever. We can talk about how my basketball takes suck, because I know that was a conversation on Twitter today. So we can get into anything and everything we want to tomorrow night live on the channel. And you can also check out my writing at MaroonWhiteNation.com, where I'm covering the Bulldogs there for the Fansided Network. Appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. If you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn the notifications on so you do know when we do go live. We'll see you all next time.